Richard von Kalergi, pioneer for the integration of Europe, feared by the Nazi regime, revered political philosopher, ideological father of the European Union, founder of the Pan-European movement, backed by Sigmund Freud, Albert Einstein, along with also Winston Churchill, and the poster child for the future of Europe, a real trailblazer for the 20th and 21st centuries. But dig a little deeper and we'll find a much darker narrative. To some, Kalergi was a disturbed aristocrat, a Freemason who hated the German people, wrote genocidal manifestos backed by the Rothschilds, international banking, and a spearhead of Europe's current immigration policy. So who the hell is Richard Kalergi? What did he achieve? And what is his book, Practical Idealism? Is he really the savior of Europe, or a diabolical madman? Born the second son of wealthy Austro-Hungarian diplomat Henryk Kalergi and a Japanese mother Mitsuko Ioma, daughter of an oil merchant and major landowner in Tokyo. She was also one of the first Japanese people to emigrate to Europe. Richard Kalergi was brought up in Ronsburg Castle. His father raised his two sons to be tough. They slept on straw mattresses, took freezing showers, and he made sure they knew how to defend themselves. They were taught how to shoot and fence. His father was also once an anti-Semite, although later retracting his anti-Semitism. He took his sons to Mass every Sunday. Kalergi once apparently stood up and walked out of Mass in defiance of the liturgical exhortation, "Let us also pray for the perfidious Jews." He believed the expression to be anti-Semitic. In 1915, he married the Jewish actress Ida Roland, much to his family's dismay as she was 13 years his senior. Kalergi achieved a doctorate in philosophy from the University of Vienna and later joined the Freemasons in 1921. Following the destruction caused by World War I, he founded the Pan-Europa movement. The Pan-Europa Union, according to Kalergi, was a federal European Union that would pave the road to a united Europe. Pan-Europe would be open to all democratic states, with aim to set aside nationalism and perpetual border conflicts for European unity, economic disintegration, and the diffusion of democratic principles. It was a Magna Carta for Europe. It would protect national minorities, and for the small concession of sovereignty, all countries would prosper economically under a union of everlasting peace. Sounds like a fairy tale to me. The Pan-Europa movement would be supported by Winston Churchill and Europe's cultural elite, such as Sigmund Freud, Thomas Mann, and Albert Einstein. In 1925, Kalergi wrote his notorious controversial book, Practical Idealism. This book details Kalergi's opinion on race, religion, ethics, and philosophy. His books were one of the many thrown amid the flames during the 1933 book burnings. Due to Kalergi's commitment to the pan-European ideal, German nationalists such as Adolf Hitler were infuriated by Kalergi, and he and his wife narrowly fled the Gestapo, first to France, later to the United States. But why? What had Kalergi written to provoke such a reaction? Was Adolf Hitler just being crazy? Or underneath the pan-European ideal was something much more sinister, laying in wait? Before we get into practical idealism, I just want to preface this by saying that the aim of this video is not to promote hatred in any way. Although I will be giving my own opinions, I am not aiming to paint Kalergi in a certain way. In fact, I will be directly quoting from the book. The page number will be in the corner. I highly recommend you guys read this book on your own. The link will be in the description. Country and city are the two poles of human existence. Centuries separate the big city from the farmland. Big city life is rational, rural life is irrational. The urban man is Christian, the rural man is pagan. He lives in symbiosis with the animal. Kalergi believes Christian morals are an urban phenomenon, a product of human coexistence. He explains that the rural man believes in the force of nature over man. The rural man sees purpose in the cosmos, the urban man in humanity. The rural man is a product of inbreeding, the urban man a mixed breed. Kalergi here is not talking about incest. He is talking of people who come from one race as inbred. He explains that because the rural man's ancestors are related to each other by blood, race, they are physically and mentally duplicates. Their tendencies of will, passions, prejudices, and inhibitions are all passed down to their children. Inbreeding, as Kalergi calls it, results in loyalty, piety, sense of family, and a narrow horizon. Inbreeding to Kalergi is conservation in place of evolution. And what is evolution, you may ask? To Kalergi, evolution is the mixed breed man. In cities, races and classes meet. Urbanites are miscegenated. The views of their parents and grandparents are eliminated, or at least weakened. Mixed breeds are always different from their parents and grandparents. Each generation is a variation of the previous one. Kalergi explains that mixed breeding leads to a new being, ancestral ties uprooted. He is distinct from his ancestors and has little connection to them. Inbreeding strengthens the character, but weakens the mind. Miscegenation weakens the character, but strengthens the mind. The man of the future will be a mixed breed. Today's races and castes will fall victim to the increased overcoming of space, time, and prejudice. The Eurasian Negroid race of the future, similar in its features to the ancient Egyptians, will replace the diversity of nations with a diversity of personalities. In mixed-race families, the children look different from each other. Each forms a new variation of the diverse parental and ancestral elements. Basically, apart from immediate ancestry, all connection to family and blood duty is lost, or as Kalergi would say, the mixed man is free to think. He has an original personality. The Christian ideal is the loving saint, the pagan ideal, the victorious hero. Kalergi compares Christianity and socialism, saying they are cosmopolitan. The resistance to Christianity emanated from the rural populations, pagans, and today the strongest resistance to a socialist way of living is from rural populations. On Christianity, Kalergi states, as far as Europe is Christian, it is, in an ethical, spiritual sense, Jewish. As far as Europe is moral, it is Jewish. Almost the whole of European ethics is rooted in Judaism. Kalergi states that the leaders of socialism are Jewish, and they want to eradicate the original sin of capitalism and transform the atoned world into an earthly paradise. What separates the Jews from the average urban citizen is mainly that they are racially sound people. Strength of character combined with sharp intellect predestines the most excellent specimen of the Jews to become leaders of humanity. The knight's superiority over the citizen was based on strength of body and character, power and courage. The introduction of firearms ended the feudal rule, the nobility of the blood. The printing press started the nobility of the mind. Socialism today is led by the aristocracy of revolutionary authors. The mental ruling class of Europe during the battle of communism versus capitalism are the Jews. Kalergi believes that the democracy we have in the world is temporary, because the people couldn't find any nobility, and as soon as a new nobility is established, democracy will disappear by itself. Nationalism, militarism, anti-Semitism, alcoholism are all slogans in the fight against the mind. The responsibility of the academic intelligentsia is to replace the feudal nobility and prepare a nobility of the mind. Kalergi believes the future nobility in Europe will be made up of blood nobility and Judaism. So for many generations, the European blood nobility lives in a political atmosphere from which the ordinary citizens are kept away. Kalergi believes political talent is subconscious and is hereditary. It can be awakened and nursed, not learned. It takes many generations to acquire these instincts. The state's job is to utilize the hereditary political talents which the aristocracy has absorbed for centuries. The Jews are predestined through their intellectual superiority to be the main influence on future aristocrats. Due to Christian oppression of the Jews for thousands of years, the result is that the Jews who are weak-willed were baptized, and so the Jews were purified of all weaknesses. Europe has, against its knowledge, through the artificial natural selection, raised the leading nation of the future. Judaism is not the new nobility, but it is the womb from which a new intellectual nobility arises, an intellectual urban master race. Because they are an international community, they are the nation with the most mixed blood and inbreeding, which means they combine high nobility, strength of will, and strength of intellect. The development of ethics and technology will protect mankind. Ethics in schools can transform European man from a predator into a domestic animal, and technology can be used to expand culture. Ethics wants to abolish greed so that people don't feel poor. Technology wants to abolish hardship so that people don't have to be poor. In Jewish mythology, the European spirit corresponds to Lucifer, the leader of man in his struggle against nature. Only through technology has Europe become the master and leader of the world. In 10,000 years, history will be divided into the pre- and post-technological ages. The Europeans, who by that time will be long extinct, will, as the fathers of the technological world change, be praised as saviors. Kalergi views the Europeans as a necessary sacrifice on the altar of progress, the fathers of a new age. Kalergi views work and suffering as something not intrinsic to life, but as an obstacle to be overcome. Neither ethics nor art nor religion nor politics will wipe out the biblical curse, but technology. The ultimate goal of technology is the replacement of slave labor through machine work. Kalergi thinks that once the necessity of work is abolished by machine, people will continue to work, only it will be fun. Work will be similar to play, sports, and free creative activity. She will not, as today, be a captor that oppresses everything human, but a tool against boredom, a distraction, and physical or mental exercise for the development of all his abilities. He believes that among politicians, there are far too many admirers of pacifism who want everything and therefore achieve nothing. Pacifism needs structure, organization, if it is to succeed. Pacifism is splintered. It has sects, but no church. Its groups work in isolation, without uniform leadership and organization. Pacifism must be ruthless and relentless in order to win its battles. If pacifism wants to win in the future, it must learn from its opponents and pursue its goals with Machiavellian means. He has to learn from robbers how to deal with robbers. Pacifism needs an international organization of power to support it. It should not reject violence. It must use it for the war against violence. An international agreement should aim to combat chauvinist hate speech against foreign nations in schools and the press. He stresses the vitality of using language to bring people together. An international common language will be used to achieve this. As a common language, only Esperanto and English come into question. Which of these is chosen is irrelevant as long as the world agrees on one of these two. Now, Esperanto was created by Ludwig Zamenhof, someone who despised the national and religious identity within his own community, and created this made-up language to facilitate the breakdown of patriotism. Esperanto is an incredibly simple language for which I could make an entire video on its own. In the 21st century, its users are all incredibly ideologically homogeneous. There is little diversity of thought behind the leftists who still shill the language to everyone conceivable. I find the mention of English along with Esperanto particularly interesting. Pacifist propaganda requires at least 2 generations for its impact. The fight against war instincts must be led by their weakening and by distraction, as well as strengthening of opposing instincts. Sport is very suitable to distract human, especially male fighting instincts, from the attraction of war. Hunting is an exception here. It preserves the most primitive form of combat and strengthens the instinct to kill, rather than divert it. Peace propaganda has to educate the masses of the dangers and horrors and threaten them in case of war, about the new rays and gases that can kill entire cities, about the threat of an extermination war. Kalergi's pacifistic vision for the future mirrors our morbid present world, a world which prioritizes peace and freedom over strength and courage. A world that has forgotten the values and heroism of the men that once built the society we live in, that allowed the comfort we enjoy. If a Marxist, leftist or atheist, Kalergi's vision for the future is a utopian ideal, for which in the past century great strides have been made to achieve. Open border policies, the acceleration of technology, the move for pacifism, and the complete mockery of any remaining nobility of blood. But for the strong, religious and European, the moves for internationalism, social Marxism, and miscegenation are the workings of weak mites who have burrowed their way into governments through lies, exploiting greed and the perpetual guilt of the European, allowing for control and the pushing of an insidious new ideology masked as a dozen others, such as liberalism, socialism, and atheism. As these ideologies mask the bare truth laid out in practical idealism, this true ideology moves insidiously through the cracks, working so slowly that no one notices the change in surroundings, and like a frog in boiling water. Because bellies are filled and people are distracted by meaningless jobs and entertainment, people fail to notice how they have been pacified, and even if they do, they proclaim how great it is that we no longer have to fight, that we have finally achieved peace, freedom, equality, and how this is the best and most progressive age within history. Whilst it would be ignorant to completely disavow pacifism and to ignore its obvious benefits, Kalergi's writings make me question, what have we given up in the search for so-called peace and freedom? What are we giving up as we sink further into this ideology, day by day, losing our connection to our ancestry and religions and trading it for comfort and warmth? This new world, which represents the antithesis of everything our ancestors stood to fight for. What is progression, if not the slow decay of a once great people?